The Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Saskatchewan Pulse Growers, DuPont Verticin Fungicide, and Nodulator XL.
I'm here with Robin Bonus, Pulse Research and Extension agronomist with Agriculture and Rural Development. So we're standing in front of some really black faba beans. When did you guys desiccate these?
These faba beans are desiccated on September the 10th, and in Alberta, that is around the time that you would want to desiccate them. If you could come in a little bit earlier, that would be okay, but you don't want to go much later than that. And when you desiccate them, you might think that they might not quite be ready. The timing to desiccate these would be when about 90% of the pods are starting to turn black, but there's still a fair amount of green on the plant, which might be surprising. You might think that it's still very green looking, but when you get down into the canopy, you'll see that the pods are actually starting to turn black from the bottom up. And the reason why we need to desiccate that early is because if you don't desiccate them, they might not actually make it to harvest in central Alberta areas, because once the frost comes in, you have these big seeds, and if these seeds are not quite ready yet, they'll just turn to absolute mush. So we always recommend desiccating before September 10th. In fact, it's kind of a calendar rule that we say to make sure that you actually make it to harvest. In order to get these plants to the point where they are ready to desiccate by September 10th, they need to be seeded as early as possible. And when I say early, I mean by May 7th and hopefully no later than that. And the reason is because these are a long season crop. They need a long time to mature and get to that point. And if September 10th comes and you haven't seeded them quite early enough, and when you do desiccate them, they'll just turn to mush because the seeds are quite big and they'll just completely break down and disintegrate on you once the frosts arrive. Seeding is usually done at a rate of about 4 to 5 plants per foot squared, or that translates to 45 plants per meter squared. And you don't need to put any nutrients or anything down with them. This crop is an excellent nitrogen fixer. In fact, it's one of the top, it is the top nitrogen fixer of all pulse crops. So no additional nitrogen is necessary, but we do recommend the addition of phosphorus just to make sure that it gets going and gets a good start. Disease issues with this crop, there isn't very many. There is one disease called chocolate spot that is found in the central Alberta area and also under irrigation in southern Alberta. I should mention that these are grown in central Alberta because of the amount of moisture and the cool temperatures that we have in this area, but they can be grown under irrigation in southern Alberta. Without irrigation, there's not quite enough moisture available to them because they do need a lot of water. For weed control, you make sure you choose a field that is clean from especially thistles and anything that can't be controlled with your pulse fungicides. And insect issues, we really don't have a lot. There is one insect, the lygus bug, that will come in and suck a little hole in the pod, and what happens is you have these tiny black pinpoint dots on the seeds, which will affect your price when you go to market them.
Do you know, is there a threshold for lygus bug control?
We don't have any thresholds at this point for the lygus bug. There's a lot of work being done with entomologists around Alberta to try to address that question. There's been a lot of sampling done over the 2013 season to try to get an idea of the amount of lygus bug that you see in the crop versus the amount of damage that you see on the seed. But right now we don't have threshold levels.
And then will this crop be ready to combine soon?
This crop is ready to combine just the way it is right now. It's been about 2.5 weeks or so since it was desiccated, and at any time you can come in. The thing about faba beans is you do not swath them. Swathing them just makes the harvestability of this crop very, very difficult. If you're looking for a pulse crop that stands up very, very well, faba beans are definitely a good choice because this crop will not lodge. I have never seen faba beans lodge to any extent, with the exception, of course, if you get hail or severe weather conditions that would affect any crop. But for the most part, this crop stands very, very well. Marketing is one of the big questions that producers have about this crop, and I would advise at this point to make sure that you get your contracts in place before you grow them. There's two types of varieties that are grown in Alberta. There's the large, what we refer to as the tannin types, and they are grown for the edible market, mostly for human consumption. And I would say about 5% of the faba beans grown in Alberta are of that type. The majority are zero tannin or a white flowered variety called Snowbird, and they are grown for human consumption but also for animal feed. Because of the lack of tannins in the white, smaller seeded, you can feed those to the hogs and to any monogastric animal, but with the addition of the tannins in the larger seeds, monogastrics cannot handle the tannins, so we can't feed that. So the smaller ones are mixed in rations, whereas the larger ones are pretty much exported exclusively to Ethiopia and Egypt for human consumption, because they actually like the taste of the tannins a little bit. I'd like to have that little snap in the flavor. They prefer that. So.
In terms of growth, the varieties are very much the same. It's more about marketability.
Yeah, they grow very much the same. The seeds are bigger in the tannin type, so the pods will be bigger, but growth characteristics are pretty much exactly the same. Yep.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.